The U.S. government just handed $40,000 checks to ICE agents running masked raids while prison guards working triple shifts got nothing. No hazard pay, no mental health support, no raises. Dan Goldman walked into Congress with one question: who does this country reward, those who serve or those who silence? What happened next turned a budget hearing into a reckoning. Stay with us. This isn't just about money. It's about what America values and who it leaves behind. The fluorescent lights of Committee Room 2154 cast harsh shadows across polished mahogany. Outside, Washington's morning traffic hums with indifferent urgency, but inside the House Budget Oversight Subcommittee, the air carries a different weight, the kind that precedes revelations. Representative Dan Goldman adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses' fingers, drumming against a manila folder thick with damning evidence. Across the horseshoe-shaped table, Republican committee members shuffle papers with practiced disinterest. They've weathered storms before. This feels like Tuesday. They're wrong. The committee chairman's gavel strikes once, twice. The gentleman from New York is recognized for opening remarks. Goldman rises slowly, deliberately. In his hand, a single sheet of paper, budget allocation, line item 4.7B ICE retention. $40 million earmarked for operational bonuses. The kind of bureaucratic language that sanitizes brutality. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. His voice carries the measured cadence of a prosecutor who spent years turning documents into weapons. Today, we're here to discuss fiscal priorities, specifically who this government chooses to reward and who it chooses to abandon. He holds up the paper, lets the committee absorb its mundane appearance. This single line item authorizes $40,000 in cash bonuses for ICE agents conducting what the administration calls enhanced enforcement operations. Masked raids, midnight roundups, the kind of work that requires anonymity because it can't survive daylight. The Republican ranking member, Congressman Bradley Hayes from Texas, leans forward. His face carries the weathered confidence of a man who's never doubted the righteousness of enforcement. The gentleman is characterizing legitimate law enforcement as, I'm characterizing nothing. Goldman's interruption is surgical. I'm reading budget allocations. Would the gentleman prefer I read them incorrectly? Silence. Goldman opens his folder, retrieves a second document. Bureau of Prison Staffing report submitted 3 weeks ago. Critical understaffing at 67% of federal facilities. Suicide rates up 40% since 2020. Overtime costs exceeding safety protocols because there simply aren't enough guards to maintain basic operations. His finger traces down the page. Requested retention bonuses for prison staff denied. Hazard pay increases denied. Mental health support programs defunded. The camera would linger here on the faces around the table, some stone-faced others beginning to shift uncomfortably. Goldman continues, his voice gaining the rhythm of accumulated outrage. Same government, same treasury, same fiscal year. He places both documents side by side. $40,000 to catch people, $0 to care for people already caught. Hayes clears his throat, the sound amplifying in the suddenly airless room. Representative Goldman, with respect, national security requires difficult choices. ICE agents face extraordinary dangers. Do prison guards not face danger? Goldman's question hangs in the air like smoke. Do correctional officers not deserve hazard pay when they're stabbed by inmates? Do they not deserve mental health support when they watch people die in custody because there's no medical staff? The ICE Deputy Director, Todd Lyons, had been invited to provide testimony. He sits rigid in the witness chair, his uniform crisp, despite the sweat beginning to bead at his temples. He'd prepared for questions about operational effectiveness, border statistics success metrics. He hadn't prepared for this. Director Lyons. Goldman turns his attention to him with the focus of a surgeon identifying diseased tissue. Your agents receive these bonuses for what specific achievements? Lyons's voice carries the practiced steadiness of someone accustomed to hostile questioning. Representative. Our agents risk their lives daily to protect American communities from dangerous individuals who... That wasn't my question. Goldman's interruption is gentle but implacable. What specific achievements triggered the $40,000 payments? Lyons glances at Hayes, seeking refuge in protocol. The specifics of operational bonuses are classified for agent safety. Agent safety. Goldman repeats the phrase as if tasting something bitter. Let me read you something that isn't classified. He reaches into his folder again, withdraws a medical report. The paper trembles slightly in his hands, not from nervousness, but from the weight of what it contains. Emergency room admission, George Washington University Hospital. Patient Miguel Santos Rivera, age 34. Admitted with severe cranial trauma, 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, and extensive bruising consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. The room has gone completely still. Even the court reporter's fingers have paused over her stenotype machine. Goldman continues reading. Attending physician's notes. Pattern of injuries suggests sustained beating with nightstick or similar implement. Patient reports being held in ICE custody at time of incident. He looks up, meets Mitchell's eyes directly. This report is dated March 15th, 2023. Would you like to guess what else happened on March 15th, 2023? Lyons's jaw tightens. Representative, I cannot comment on individual cases. Goldman doesn't wait for her to finish. He's already retrieving another document from his seemingly bottomless folder of evidence. ICE Financial Operations Bonus Distribution Schedule March 2023. Agent identification numbers 4471-5522 and 7834 receive expedited bonus payments totaling $120,000 for exceptional performance in high-risk detainee management. The silence that follows isn't just absence of sound, it's the presence of understanding. The terrible mathematics of incentive and outcome, reward and consequence. Hayes attempts damage control. Representative Goldman, you're drawing connections that... I'm reading government documents. Goldman's voice has lost all pretense of parliamentary courtesy. Same dates, same facility, same system that paid bonuses for exceptional performance while Miguel Santos Rivera lay unconscious in a hospital bed. He walks to the easel positioned beside the witness table. With deliberate movements, he places two photographs side by side. The first, a government check payable to ICE agent Damajor 471 in the amount of $40,000. The second, Miguel Santos Rivera, in a hospital bed, face swollen beyond recognition, machines monitoring his failing vital signs. One of them got a check, Goldman says quietly. The other got a toe tag. You funded both. Now tell me, what kind of justice is that? The question reverberates through the chamber like a bell struck in a cathedral. Lyons stares at his hands. Hayes shuffles papers, frantically seeking talking points that don't exist for this moment. Goldman isn't finished. But Miguel Santos Rivera isn't here today. He died from his injuries 6 weeks after this photograph was taken. Goldman's voice breaks slightly, the first crack in his prosecutorial armor. His widow, Maria Santos Rivera, is. Every head in the room turns toward the gallery, where a small woman in a black dress rises slowly. Her face carries the particular gravity of grief seasoned with fury. She doesn't speak, doesn't need to. Her presence alone transforms the bureaucratic chamber into something approaching a courtroom. Goldman's voice finds its strength again. Mrs. Santos Rivera, thank you for being here today. I know this isn't easy. She nods once sits back down. The gesture contains more moral authority than all the congressional rhetoric in the building. Mrs. Santos Rivera has waived her right to speak today. Goldman continues. She said her husband's medical records speak loudly enough, but she did ask me to share one thing. He reaches into his jacket pocket, withdraws a small photograph. Miguel Santos Rivera in ICE custody, smiling despite the detention center backdrop. Alive. Hopeful. She wanted you to see her husband as he was before your agents earned their bonuses. The photograph passes from hand to hand along the committee table. Each member studies it briefly before passing it along as if it might catch fire in their fingers. When it reaches Lyons, he stares at it for a long moment before setting it down with careful precision. Hayes makes one final attempt at deflection. Representative Goldman, tragic as individual cases may be, we cannot make policy based on individual cases. Goldman's voice rises for the first time, echoing off the chamber walls. Shall I read you the full list? He doesn't wait for permission. His folder seems to contain an endless supply of horrors. Carlos Mendoza beaten unconscious during ICE raid bonus payments distributed same week. Ana Gutierrez hospitalized with broken jaw, agents receive hazard pay supplements. David Kim died in ICE custody, autopsy showed signs of strangulation, supervising agents promoted with retroactive bonuses. Each name hits the room like a physical blow. Goldman's voice gains momentum, becoming a litany of the disappeared, the damaged, the dead. Should I continue, because I have 47 more names, 47 people whose suffering generated paperwork that generated bonuses that generated silence? The committee members sit in stunned paralysis. This isn't the hearing they'd prepared for. Goldman had promised budget oversight, not a tribunal. Mrs. Santos Rivera asked me something else. Goldman continues, his voice returning to its earlier measured tone. She asked me to explain how a government that can't afford to keep prison guards safe can't afford to provide health care to inmates, can't afford mental health support for correctional officers, how that same government can afford $40,000 to reward the people who put her husband in the hospital. He pauses, lets the question settle. I told her I didn't know, but I promised her I'd ask. Goldman turns to face the committee directly, his posture shifting from prosecutor to inquisitor. So I'm asking. Chairman Hayes, Director Lyons, members of this committee explained to Mrs. Santos Rivera how her husband's life was worth less than an ICE agent's bonus check. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable. Hayes clears his throat, shuffles papers, clears his throat again. Lyons stares at his hands as if they might provide answers. Goldman isn't waiting for their response. He's already moving to his folder again, retrieving a thick manila envelope sealed with red tape. But perhaps individual stories aren't compelling enough for this committee. Perhaps you prefer data. He breaks the seal dramatically, the sound sharp in the silent chamber. Inside a bound report titled, "The Docket of Worth Financial Incentives for Human Rights Violations 2019-2024. Compiled by the Government Accountability Office at my request," Goldman announces, 137 cases where ICE or CBP personnel receive bonuses, promotions, or financial incentives within 30 days of documented human rights violations. He opens to a random page, begins reading. Case number 23, agent receives $40,000 retention bonus 3 weeks after detainee death in custody. Case number 41, supervisor promoted with salary increase following facility outbreak that killed 8 inmates. Case number 67, unit receives group hazard pay after riot caused by deliberate food contamination. The recitation continues, each case a small monument to institutional cruelty incentivized by institutional reward. Goldman's voice never wavers, never editorializes. The facts are terrible enough without embellishment. Hayes finally finds his voice. Representative Goldman, even if these correlations exist, you cannot prove causation. Or was causation. Goldman closes the report with a snap that echoes like a gunshot. Congressman Hayes, when you pay people for exceptional performance and exceptional performance coincides with human rights violations, what exactly do you think you're incentivizing? The question hangs in the air, unanswerable, because its answer is too terrible to voice. Goldman walks back to his seat, but doesn't sit down. Instead, he stands behind his chair like a closing argument that's found its rhythm. This committee appropriated $12 billion for immigration enforcement this fiscal year. $12 billion to fund an apparatus that rewards cruelty and punishes compassion. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Prisons, responsible for actually maintaining human dignity in government custody, receives funding cuts. He gestures toward Mrs. Santos Rivera in the gallery. That woman lost her husband to a system that paid his killers over time. Those payments came from your budget, your votes, your signatures on appropriations bills. His voice drops to just above a whisper, forcing the committee to lean forward to hear him. So, I'll ask you one more time. What kind of government are we running here? The question echoes in the chamber's silence. Outside, Washington continues its oblivious churn of power and process. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzz with the same mechanical indifference they've maintained all morning. But something fundamental has shifted. The room now contains knowledge that cannot be unknown, questions that cannot be unanswered. Goldman finally sits down, places his hands flat on the table in front of him. The gesture suggests both conclusion and beginning the end of his presentation, the start of consequences he cannot control. Hayes attempts to regain procedural footing. The committee thanks the gentleman from New York for his comprehensive presentation. We'll now move to Mr. Chairman. Goldman's interruption is quiet, but absolute. There's one more thing. He reaches into his jacket pocket one final time, withdraws a single sheet of paper. Not a government document this time, but something handwritten. The paper looks fragile, personal. Miguel Santos Rivera wrote this letter 3 days before he died. It was found in his effects addressed to his daughter, Sophia. She's 7 years old. Goldman's voice catches slightly as he unfolds the letter. The paper trembles in his hands this time, definitely from emotion, not theatricality. Mija, he begins reading. Papa might not come home from this place. The men here, they are very angry, and I do not think they see me as a person. But I want you to know that I tried to be good. I tried to follow their rules. I tried to make them understand that I just want to work and take care of you and Mama. The letter continues, but Goldman stops reading. The words hanging in the air are sufficient, more than sufficient. He folds the letter, carefully returns it to his pocket. Miguel Santos Rivera believed in America enough to risk everything for the chance to work here legally. He believed in our justice system enough to cooperate with ICE detention. He believed in human decency enough to think that following the rules would keep him safe. Goldman stands again facing the committee with the full weight of accumulated evidence and moral authority. Miguel Santos Rivera was wrong about all of those things, but he wasn't wrong about what this country could be, what this government should be, what this committee could choose to fund instead of what it currently chooses to reward. The silence that follows isn't expectant anymore. It's final. Goldman has said everything there is to say. The evidence speaks for itself. The photographs document their own testimony. The budget allocations reveal their own priorities. Hayes gavels the hearing to recess, but the sound seems small and inadequate against the magnitude of what's been revealed. Committee members file out quickly, avoiding eye contact with Mrs. Santos Rivera, with Goldman with each other. Lyons remains seated at the witness table, staring at the photograph of Miguel Santos Rivera that still lies before him. His uniform, so crisp at the hearing's beginning, now looks somehow diminished. He picks up the photograph, studies it one more time, then places it carefully in his briefcase. Goldman packs his folder methodically, each document returned to its proper place. The manila envelope marked "The Docket of Worth" goes in last sealed again, with red tape that now seems less bureaucratic than ceremonial. Mrs. Santos Rivera approaches the table as Goldman finishes packing. They don't speak, language feels insufficient for the moment. She places her hand briefly on his shoulder, a gesture that contains both gratitude and the terrible weight of justice delayed. As the committee room empties, the camera would linger on the easel still holding Goldman's 2 photographs, the bonus check, and the hospital bed. The morning light from the tall windows has shifted, casting different shadows across the evidence. but the juxtaposition remains stark, undeniable. The fluorescent lights buzz with their mechanical indifference. The polished mahogany reflects nothing. The morning traffic outside continues its urgent nowhere journey. But something has changed. The silence now contains knowledge. The empty chamber now holds testimony that cannot be retracted. The budget allocations now carry the weight of names, faces, stories. Miguel Santos Rivera is still dead. His killers still have their bonuses. The system still rewards cruelty while punishing compassion. But the secret is out. The docket of worth has been read into the congressional record. Mrs. Santos Rivera has been seen, heard, acknowledged. 47 names have been spoken aloud in the chamber where budgets become law and law becomes policy. Goldman's folder is packed, but its contents have been permanently deposited in the official record of American governance. The photographs return to their manila sleeves, but their images remain burned into the retinas of everyone who witnessed them. The hearing is over. The reckoning has just begun. As Goldman walks toward the chamber's exit, he passes the American flag standing at attention beside the chairman's seat. The fabric hangs motionless in the artificial air, its stars and stripes as silent as everything else in the room. But beneath the flag on the table, where the morning's evidence accumulated like sedimentary layers of institutional failure, a single document remains: the budget allocation that started it all. Line item 4.7B ICE retention, $40 million for exceptional performance. The paper looks smaller now, somehow diminished by everything that's been built upon it. But it's still there, still official, still law. Outside the committee room, Washington continues its eternal circulation of power and process. Lobbyists hurry between appointments. Staffers carry briefcases full of bills and amendments and the endless paperwork of governance. Tourists take pictures of marble columns and bronze statues, monuments to democracy's promise. But in Committee Room 2154, the fluorescent lights buzz over empty chairs and abandoned tables, illuminating nothing except the question that Goldman asked and no one answered. What kind of government are we running here? The budget will pass. The bonuses will continue. ICE agents will receive their rewards for exceptional performance, whatever that performance might entail. But the question remains echoing in the empty chamber like a prayer or a curse or a promise. What kind of government are we running here?